border security. It reportedly falls far short of the $5.7 billion in wall funding the president has been requesting. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov, and in the center seat, he made it from across the street. Sirius XM radio host and Fox News contributor David Webb, host of Reality Check on Fox Nation's streaming service, and a brand new Reality Check mug. I didn't get mine. Melissa, did you get yours?
They're on order, and I'm wearing the watch.
Oh, you have a watch too?
Yeah, I've got
All right.
the watch.
Well, let's watch this. President Trump is doubling down on his push for a border wall during a campaign-style rally in El Paso, Texas last night, just a mile from the border with Mexico. He's not yet said if he will sign the deal lawmakers have reached, but suggested that he will do whatever is necessary to build the wall.
It's called we're setting the stage, we're setting the table, we're doing whatever we have to do. The wall's being built, it'll continue, it's going at a rapid pace. I want people to come in to our country, but they have to come in legally and they have to come in through merit, so they can help us build our country. Make America great again. Pretty soon we're going to be saying, keep America great, keep America great.
Just this morning, the leaders of the Senate weighed in.
The notion that Congress shouldn't spend more than $1 on new border barriers, and the idea that we should impose a hard statutory cap on ICE detainees. Fortunately, our Democratic colleagues did abandon those unreasonable positions, and the negotiations were able to move forward productively.
We must not have a rerun of what happened a few months back, where legislators, Democrat and Republican, House and Senate agreed, and President Trump pulled the rug out from under the agreement and caused a shutdown. If he opposes this agreement, the same thing could happen again. We don't need it.
Sources are telling The Hill that the deal includes about $1.3 billion for 55 new miles of fencing, an increase in spending for the Department of Homeland Security, a decrease in the number of beds at border detention facilities. The White House says it cannot say if it will support this measure until all of the details have been confirmed. Lawmakers have until Friday night to reach a deal to avert another partial government shutdown. David Webb, we are getting so close to the next step in all of this. Do you think they've got it?
No.
Why not?
There are a couple of blockades in the Senate, one of them being Richard Shelby of Alabama, John Cornyn of Texas being two of the problems with this deal. The money being offered by the Democrats is a farce. Their latest shift is to detention beds. The goal there being that you don't have the beds. From 38,000 to 16 was the original proposal, because then you can neither capture and hold or hold long enough so you release them into the country. This is basically de facto open borders proposals by the Democrats. The bollard fencing will not get done. Remember, there's also another farce in this. There is not 700 miles of actual hard fencing. There's only 356 miles of real fence that's in place permanently. The rest is portable fence. We need to deal with this issue, and they're not dealing with security. They're dealing with politics.
All right, let me jump in just because in the rally last night, and you could see it in social media today resonating from that point, finish the wall, which goes into some of the details that you're talking about, because the president has talked all along about taking funding and kind of upgrading and refurbishing the balance of those miles of I don't know what you just called it, but kind of light fence line that exists
so
there.
There's a couple of things that do exist. One, and for anyone, you can go look this up, I believe it's 10 U.S.C. 284, gives authorization to the president on some security issues relating to the border. When he asked the cabinet secretaries and agencies to go out and find the money that existed, they found more money than the $5.7 billion. Most of it can be used. Some of it you would have to work around some legal issues. So the money's there, but that's not not enough. This has got to be dealt with as an all or nothing, because the president has to get this done, because it's about security, and the politicians that are in the way, mostly Democrat, include a few Republicans, they don't really care about security. They're playing games with it.
Yeah. You mentioned Senator Richard Shelby of Alabama on
the former Democrat who became a convenient Republican.
Appropriations Committee is what I understand. You know, it is somewhat about the money, though, because we are far afield from the original $25 billion.
Exactly. You know, they wanted $26 billion to complete the fence or to build a border barrier, which experts on the ground have been asking for years. The 2006 Fence Act approved that Democrats and Republicans voted for 700 miles of fencing that has not been completed. So now they're backing it back. But they approved 700 miles without funding it. And so the point now is, you already approved the mileage. You should be approving the funding to make sure that it gets done. But in terms of this deal, it's pretty garbage. I mean, $1 billion for 55 miles of bollard fencing that still allows people to get through it. What's the point of that?
It's mostly a vehicle fence line.
And
mostly.
The issue and said, okay, we'll give $5 billion for 52,000 new beds so we can have a more humane system, because we have to detain these people because they're coming into the country unorderly and illegally. And now they want to put a cap on it so that anybody can just come into the country and be released into the interior. I mean, that's insane.
I had a pretty terse back and forth yesterday with a Democrat congressman from California, and normally we're all smiles with each other, Garamendi. But at one point, he was arguing that the number of beds would not be cut for people who have not committed further crimes other than coming. At least we got on the same page that you committed a crime coming into the country. We got on the same page about that. But he said, you know, it would specifically be for those people who are alleged to have committed more violent crimes. We went round and around about this so we could get on the same page that that's what everybody is talking about.
It's a flat-out lie, for one.
I wanted Jessica just to have a quick second, David, to respond. She's a Democrat.
I am. I think that we need to see the text of it before we get into this, because hopefully that will be laid out. But I agree, if I was a Republican, or a Trump Republican, I should say, that I would think that this deal definitely benefited Democrats. $1.37 billion is less than the $1.6 billion Chuck Schumer initially gave to the president that he turned down. But I have seen that the number of beds will be malleable, so that the number comes down at the beginning, but there are ways to get more beds in there. But net, the president needs to keep the government open. He did not benefit from the last shutdown.
Actually, Congress needs to try to do that.
Well, but it will be up to him now, and Congress will be unified in passing this like they were a month and a half ago.
I think it's just such a tremendous policy shift, though, for Democrats to go from we need beds because we want to be, you know, humanitarians about this, and we want to try and help people, that we're going to have fewer beds. We voted for the fencing, but now we won't spend money. I don't know when Democrats ever didn't want to spend money, especially when they already agreed it was the right policy. They just won't put money towards it, and that just makes it feel like it's about thwarting the president.
Well, let's be honest about Washington, D.C., House and Senate. There are two lies told to the American people. One is the cloture vote in the Senate, where you can vote for or against something, but it never gets to the floor. Second, Katie brought up, which is you vote to approve a legislation you never appropriate. In the 2006 Act, and what came out of that, and what was investigated by Brian Zimmer when he went down, they spent $1 billion on 1 mile of wall. So we're being lied to when the Democrats say they support it. The lie is, I can say I voted for it, but I never appropriate. This is fact.
Can I just say one more thing about the beds issue? They're saying they want to cap it for the reason of not wanting to detain people who come here illegally. They're calling them law-abiding immigrants when they don't have any kind of legal status. And the fact that we have this bed problem, that we're debating the number of beds by the thousands, proves that there is a crisis of thousands of people coming to the country, claiming asylum falsely, coming into the country illegally, and that proves the point that this is a crisis that has to be dealt with, because we're spending money on beds, we're building new facilities, and our Democrats want to limit it and release all of these people, which again shows that there is a problem on the border with people just coming into the country.
Can I ask Jessica, if people come in and you have people who are supposed to be families or their children or whatever, doesn't it make sense to take a moment to see if they're healthy, to see if they're with people who are actually their parents, to make sure they're not being trafficked? Isn't that what these beds are for?
It is, which is why there would still be, what, 42,000 of them. There are people, and I understand it, the phraseology of law-abiding immigrant when they haven't even been processed through the asylum system, that's not the right moniker for that. But I believe what they're trying to get at, that there are people who are coming here with legitimate cause. They have been hounded out of Honduras or Guatemala. They are coming here for a better life, and they are going to be killed. They have no opportunity.
42,000 of them, Jessica.
Really? But
and that is fact.
Really, I think that if we went and looked at those countries, you would definitely find 42,000 plus who do need to be here.
The border by the numbers, when over 93% of them get their asylum claims turned aside. And by the way, the other side of the detention beds, because we have to look at this for what it is. Talk to the experts. When we capture people, we go out and we find an illegal alien, a criminal illegal. That detention space, which is the way the president classified it, and that's important, that space is where they keep that person. So it's not just about the, quote, asylum seekers coming across the border.
That's a very important point. And in fact, what I said to Congressman Garamendi yesterday, that space is critical because that's where we hold them prior to deportation. So if you take away that custody, those moments in that detention, and you take away that facility's ability to house people, are you then wiping away what ICE does?
Right.
It goes out, it captures people. Where the heck are they going to put them? And then can you deport them if you have no place to process?
And that's the question is Democrats don't want ICE in immigrant communities and in communities where illegal immigrants are living inside America, you know, for years at a time. They don't want ICE going in and doing these deportation raids. However, they also don't want them detaining them at the border and put into these humanitarian processing centers either. And so you have to pick one. You can't just allow people to flow into the country and then be upset when ICE goes to look for them.
Well, I would love to know the Democrats' response to that. We can talk more in just a moment. We're going to slide in this breaking news, though. The El Chapo verdict has been reached. El Chapo Guzman, leader of the notorious Sinaloa, engaging in continuing criminal enterprise, cocaine distribution conspiracy. The notorious Sinaloa, engaging in continuing criminal enterprise, cocaine distribution conspiracies, and not of others. We've been covering this trial. We cannot tell you yet what the verdict is, but we can report that El Chapo, the verdict is in. And as the jury has reached this verdict, we have been waiting in deliberations now for several days. Prosecutors had said at the federal level they felt like they had a ton of evidence. And through our reporting of Brian Yennis, who's been on this case from the very beginning, it looked like they might. But as we always know with these cases, you've got to see the evidence first, and now the verdict. As it comes through to us, we will take that information live. We're trying to get Brian up as well. Melissa?
In the meantime, as President Trump held his rally, potential 2020 contender Beto O'Rourke spoke at his own event about a half-mile away. The president poking fun at the former congressman's possible White House ambitions.
But a young man who's got very little going for himself, except he's got a great first name. He challenged us. What I would do is I would say that may be the end of his presidential bid, but he did challenge us.
And O'Rourke went directly after the president's message and the president's claim that the border wall helped reduce crime in Beto's hometown of El Paso.
Here we are at the center of the U.S.-Mexico border, at the center of the conversation about the future of the border, of immigration, of our relationship with Mexico.
Here, in one of the safest cities in the United States of America. Safe, not because of walls, but in spite of walls.
O'Rourke remains one of the highest profile Democrats for the presidency.
Safe, not because of walls, but in spite of walls.
O'Rourke remains one of the highest profile Democrats for the presidency, with many attendees at his rally held signs urging him to run for the White House. The national media taking note, some outlets suggesting that the head-to-head rallies may turn out to be O'Rourke's possible first 2020 moment, as ABC News put it. Jessica, I'll start with you. Is this somebody that you feel like has a has a good chance? He obviously has
he definitely
big following.
has a constituency.
Yeah.
And I think that he is a great messenger. Listen, coming within 3 points of Ted Cruz in Texas is a big deal. And I think that he is a worthwhile addition to the conversation. I think that running a counter rally is interesting just to put the messages up against each other. Also, that's where he was a representative. And it should be noted, President Trump won Texas by 9 points, but he lost El Paso by 43. So this is actually more naturally Beto O'Rourke's constituency than it is Donald Trump. A majority of the people who were at President Trump's rally came from other areas of Texas to see him. So, I think he's a great messenger. I'm not sure once we see everyone who's getting in if he is going to come out on top there, but we welcome all voices, and I was incredibly impressed with his campaign for Senate.
And we're showing you the White House live there because we are expecting that we're going to have some sound from the president. No doubt he's going to be talking about this issue, and the second that we get it, we're going to bring it to you. David, go ahead. What were you saying?
$70 million to lose, mostly from outside money. Beto O'Rourke actually likes to put it all together, so let's look at some facts. 2001, there's a spike in crime in El Paso. I was down in Texas at the time, so I'd been tracking this since the 90s on the border, and since the mid-90s. You get to 2008 when they actually put up physical barriers in El Paso. Crime had begun to go down because of increased enforcement. After 2008, it took a sharp drop because of the things they did.
I know, and everybody looks at that series of stats and they can find the inflection points of their own and kind of make their case. No, I understand.
Can I just get this word in? And I hear all of those numbers, but, on his Twitter feed and also in interviews, the mayor of El Paso has been taking extreme exception to the perception of his city as being a place that is lawless. And so I just want to get that out there.
And that it ever was.
Because
it actually was, because I've actually been there.
But he's the mayor.
The point is that El Paso today is a safe place.
That's what he said.
Juarez,
he didn't deny the
right
past.
Across the border, across the fence, across the wall,
no, it's
had an average of 100 murders per month last year.
In fact, Katie, it even has like a visceral, like when you stand on one side of a family in El Paso and you look into Juarez, what do you see at night? Nothing.
Gunfire.
Yeah,
you have parents in Juarez who have their kids daily walk into El Paso and go to school because we don't check.
It's a very different scene at night.
It's a very different scene. You go to the parking lots in El Paso, as I did back in '90s, in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s. You see the change up till 2008, and there's
the mayor says that the change has been very big on his side of the line.
Okay,
so I just
there you go.
That out there.
Political turmoil continues for Virginia's top 3 Democrats, and now President Trump is speaking out about embattled Governor Ralph Northam. This as several of Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax staffers quit amid sexual assault allegations against their boss. Can they hold on to power? And what does it mean for the Democratic Party? Plus, fallout continues even after Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar apologizes about remarks about congressional support for Israel. Some say that's not enough and that the Democrats need to do more.
Now we have those same members, many of them tripping all over each other, running away from the House floor so they don't have to condemn anti-Semitism, and they are accepting an apology via Twitter.
And we are on verdict watch right now. The El Chapo Guzman trial. The deliberations have been going on for several days. Jurors have come back with a verdict. We don't know yet what it will be, but we are told to expect it in the next little while. This trial has been salacious, as you know. We have covered many moments with it with our Fox News team on the story here. And we've even seen some of the people who've come into town to testify in this trial. It has gone one way in terms of drugs, illegal drugs. It has gone another way in terms of how many times El Chapo has escaped, been recaptured, and the women in his life have provided some interesting details. Our Brian Yennis is in Brooklyn, New York. It has been dramatic, and now potentially an ending to it all. Brian?
Hi, Harris. That's exactly right. It has been dramatic in this trial. You know, this jury of 4 men and 8 women have been at this for about 3 months. And so now, any moment now, we'll finally hear what their verdict is. This is a complicated trial, not only in the sense of the counts. There are 10 federal counts that this jury has had to consider over the course of the last 6 days of deliberations, but also in the sense of the avalanche of evidence, as the prosecution has put it, that they are considering. Over the last 3 months, some 56 witnesses have gone on and testified against Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Not only that, there has been just tons of cocaine seizures that have been shown, rifles, and not only that, text messages and phone calls of presumably El Chapo making deals. And it's just been the avalanche of evidence that they've had to consider, but also the entirety of the counts that we're looking at are complicated. The big one that we're going to be hearing for and trying to look out for right now is count 1. That's engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise. Was Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in charge of the Sinaloa cartel? Now, that count has some 27 different violations that the jury is going to have to consider. The jury only has to find that he is guilty on 3 of those 27 violations to find him guilty on that first count. And that is really the big one, because if the jury, for instance, finds that not only was he in charge of the cartel, but that this cartel made over $10 million. Had talking about, again, Harris, some 10 federal counts, 7 cocaine charges, a firearms charge, a money laundering charge, and then that running a criminal enterprise. This has been an extraordinary case, as you have mentioned, Harris. No one has ever brought in as much cocaine, meth, heroin, illicit drugs into the United States than this one man. Over the course of 25 years, the prosecution told this story about how a man in the mountains of Sinaloa, Mexico, found ways to bring in and smuggle these drugs through tunnels, through legal ports of entry in dramatic ways, and has evaded justice in Mexico for the course of 25 years, twice escaping prison in 2001 and again in 2015. In 2001 in a laundry cart, and in 2015 in a mile-long tunnel. This has been a 2-year saga. He was extradited here to the United States, landing in Long Island in January of 2017. And for the last 2 years, he has been held in solitary confinement, 22, 23, 24 hours in that jail cell. And now we will all await the fate of the man that is known as the most notorious and infamous drug trafficker that we've known in modern history.
Brian, let me ask you a question just to build on some of the things that you said. You know, 200 hours of testimony, 14 government cooperators, 56 witnesses. I mean, the case that they put on is staggering. Is there a chance, we know this is the second week of deliberations, that they overcomplicated it? Was it too much for the jury?
Right, and that's a really good point. The defense has come in and said, look, there's enough reasonable doubt. Of these 56 witnesses, 14 of them are people who are criminals in their own right, and that was the big defense that they've made, that you can't trust these criminals. You cannot convict El Chapo and trust the word of men who have killed plenty of other people and have taken charge in the drug trafficking area as well.
All right, Brian Yanis, of course, we will come back to you as the news warrants, and we await that verdict of the El Chapo trial here in New York. Thank you. Now we want to take you to the other news that is breaking right now. The President of the United States, on the heels of a huge rally just a mile from our border with Mexico in El Paso, Texas last night, is in the cabinet meeting room right now. This will be our first opportunity to hear from him. He made a case for the wall and funding for it, and we know that on Capitol Hill, a bipartisan group of conferees have come up with a deal. The question now is, would the president sign this deal? Is it enough for him for a wall? Did they have enough skin in the game for what they want as well? Now, the President of the United States.
Sir, will you sign Congress's border deal?
I have to study it. I'm not happy about it. It's not doing the trick, but I'm adding things to it. And when you add whatever I have to add, it's all going to happen where we're going to build a beautiful, big, strong wall that's not going to let criminals and traffickers and drug dealers and drugs into our country. It's very simple. It's very simple. We're building a wall. And now I'm saying we're finishing a wall. We just started a big section on the Rio Grande. You probably saw it. Some of you were there when they started. You went there. You didn't believe it. You went there. You see trucks all over the place. You said, hey, he's not kidding. I don't kid. I never cared about construction. I love construction. And I know how to do it for the right price. And we're getting a beautiful looking structure that's also less expensive to build and works much better. That's a good combination of events, because it was crazy what they were putting up. In fact, I happen to think that the walls that they were building were so unattractive and so ugly that walls got bad names, okay, if that means anything. But they were so ugly, with rusted steel and big ugly plates on top that were all tin canned. It's called tin canned, where they're wavy, because the heat makes them expand and contract, and they tin can. I say, why didn't you paint the steel? Well, sir, we save money by not painting it. I said, yeah, but it's going to rust. You have to paint. I've ordered a lot of steel. I've never seen in my whole life steel come to me that was unpainted. This can only happen at the border. It wasn't me. It was our past geniuses. So I can tell you that, am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no, I'm not. I'm not happy. But am I happy with where we're going? I'm thrilled, because we're supplementing things and moving things around, and we're doing things that are fantastic and taking from far less important areas. And the bottom line is we're building a lot of wall. Right now we're building a lot of wall. And you think it's easy? We're building in the face of tremendous obstruction and tremendous opposition from a small group of people. Now, one thing that happened that was, I think, very revealing, we had the biggest and best border agents and experts come up and see the committee. And they said, more than anything else, you need a barrier, you need a wall. And the recommendation was unacceptable to the committee. So that tells you more than anything else. I don't think you're going to see a shutdown. I wouldn't want to go to it now. If you did have it, it's a Democrat's fault. And I accepted the first one, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished, because people learned during that shutdown all about the problems coming in from the southern border. I've always accepted it. But this one, I would never accept if it happens, but I don't think it's going to happen. But this would be totally on the Democrats. Okay?
So, Mr. President, are you saying that you may amend and send back the proposed compromise, or that you may grudgingly accept it and then move forward?
It's always nice to negotiate a little bit, right? So, whatever you get. But I would hope that there won't be a shutdown. I am extremely unhappy with what the Democrats have given us. It's sad. It's sad. They're doing the country no favor. They are hurting our country very badly. But we certainly don't want to see a shutdown. But you'll be hearing fairly soon. The bottom line is on the wall. We're building the wall, and we're using other methods other than this. And in addition to this, we have a lot of things going. We have a lot of money in this country, and we're using some of that money, a small percentage of that money, to build the wall, which we desperately need.
Mr. President, so when do you meet President Xi at the end of March?
Not at this moment. We have our people over there now. I just got a report. Things are going well with China. China wants to make a deal very badly. I want it to be a real deal, not just a deal that makes, cosmetically looks good for a year. We have a chance to really make a deal, a real deal with China. We've never been in this position before. We've always been the lame duck, and we're not the lame duck anymore. We've gone up tremendously in value as a country, in economic value, tremendously. Larry, we've gone up, 11 trillion, 14 trillion, and China's gone down close to 20 trillion since we started this whole...
Worst performing stock market in the world.
Say it?
China, worst performing stock market in the world.
Has anybody ever heard of Larry Kudlow? That voice, I hear that voice, and you think money, right, Larry?
Thank you, sir.
So I didn't even know that. That's China, he said, is the worst performing stock market right now in the world, and we don't want that. We want China to do what, and that's because of us. And we're have to be one of the best performing stock markets, but we are the best performing country. And we have a lot of potential for further growth. So we're doing very well over in China. Our people are there, the people very well. And I think we're going to have some good answers. I think either way, I'm happy. I'm happy either way. I could live receiving billions and billions of dollars a month from China. China never gave us 10 cents. It was always the opposite way. Now they're paying billions of dollars a month for the privilege of coming into the United States and honestly taking advantage of our country. So we'll see how it works out. But at some point, I expect to meet with President Xi, who I have a lot of respect for and like a lot, and make the parts of the deal that the group is unable to make. That's the way deals happen.
Will the March 1st deadline slide, do you think?
Well, thus far, I've said, as you know, the tariffs tick up for us. In other words, we take in much more money because the tariff, and there's nothing they can do that's comparable. So it's not like tit for tat. The tariffs kick in, they go up. Right now, they're paying 25% on $50 billion, okay? And they're paying 10% on $200 billion. So we have $250 billion. We have $267 billion that we were very nice about and we're not taxing. On the $200 billion, we're paying the 10%. The 10% on $200 billion goes up to 25% on March 1st. And so far, I've said don't do that. Now, if we're close to a deal where we think we can make a real deal and it's going to get done, I could see myself letting that slide for a little while. But generally speaking, I'm not inclined to do that. Okay?
Sir, were you aware? Congress sent you a deal that you disagree with. Would you consider declaring a national emergency to build the wall?
I consider everything. I'm considering everything. You know, we already have national emergencies out there. You know, President Obama, President Clinton, President Bush, they've declared many national. This is not unique. They've declared many national emergencies. Many, many. And you have some out there that we can use in addition to one that we can declare if we want to do it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was the president in the cabinet room moments ago. Among the highlights, he said that he has seen the deal that Congress is putting together. And am I happy with it? No. But I am happy where it is going. Yes. I don't think there will be a shutdown. He said that he does not want to see a shutdown. Also commenting on China and the talks going on there with Xi, saying that China wants to make a deal and that they have the worst stock market, performing stock market in the world right now. But now we want to turn you to the verdict that has been reached in the trial of El Chapo Guzman. We're going to go to Brian Yennis in Brooklyn right now, and we understand that he is guilty on at least one count. Brian, fill us in.
That's right. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was just found guilty on count one, engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise. This jury of 12 Americans has now sentenced the world's most notorious drug trafficker to life in prison. It is a mandatory life in prison. This jury found not only was he the leader of the Sinaloa cartel over 25 years and in charge of prolific drug trafficking that in which 200 tons of cocaine were seized, but also that he engaged in murder conspiracy. That was one of the violations in this count one. There were 27 violations. This jury found him guilty on 26 of those violations, including murder conspiracy. And again, this man who gained infamy for escaping and evading justice in Mexico will not be evading justice anytime soon. The 61-year-old drug lord sentenced to life in prison. And again, we spoke about the evidence, and a lot of people were talking about why this was taking so long, given the avalanche of evidence that the prosecution has shown, the phone calls and the text message. And now we are now just hearing that this jury has found El Chapo guilty on all counts, not just count one, but guilty on all 10 federal counts. That includes 7 drug trafficking charges. That includes leading and engaging in a criminal enterprise, a firearms charge, as well as money laundering. So yes, El Chapo will be spending the rest of his life in prison. Guys?
Before I let you go, because we do want to bring in senior judicial analyst in just a moment, Brian, but what was the tone, the tenor, the mood inside the courtroom as being reported?
I can tell you this. We're still waiting on our reporter that was inside the courtroom. They have not been let go just yet. So we'll get the details on that. But I'll tell you this. El Chapo, every single day of this 3-month trial, came in smiley. He was upbeat. He would wave to his wife who was there. He really seemed confident, especially with his defense attorney, Jeffrey Lichtman. When Jeffrey Lichtman gave his closing argument, he shook his hand emphatically, El Chapo did, and he seemed to be approving as to what this defense did. He seemed to be, as from what the lawyers said, calm and expecting and prepared for, he was prepared for the worst, not expecting, prepared for the worst, but calm and optimistic. So, again, we shall see what the response is inside any moment now when our court reporter comes out.
Well, and I know each day you've been telling us about that smile on his face, and there were some chippy moments. You talk about his wife in there. The mistress gave quite a bit of testimony in this trial as well. We'll come back to you for more. Brian Yennis. Fox senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano joins me now, or joins us, I should say. Judge, let me ask you this. So first we hear about a guilty on count 1 life sentence, and then within seconds we hear guilty on all 10 federal counts. Are you surprised that it's a full guilty?
No, I'm not surprised. The evidence of his guilt, Harris, was overwhelming. The defense was that the people who testified against him were crooks and thugs who had participated in all kinds of horrific things themselves, and therefore they shouldn't be believed. But quite frankly, the government did a truly brilliant job of not only getting all these people from Mexico to come to the United States and testify against them, but in corroborating their testimony with forensic evidence, physical things, and texts and emails that can't lie. So the reason it took the jury as long as it did is because of the mountain and volume of the evidence, and I think we can tell from the questions they asked during the deliberation period that they went did the jury. I looked at those jury instructions. I thought they were crafted wonderfully. They explained to non-lawyers, members of the jury, what the obligation was that the government had, what it had to prove, and how it had to go about proving it, and how they could find him not guilty or guilty. I don't think there's any issue with the jury charges at all. I know 60 pages is long, and a lot of judges don't like to send the jury charges in writing into the jury. They'd rather read it aloud to the jury. But the preferred method today, when they are that long and complex, is to let the jury have it and spend some time reading it.
All right, real quick, Judge, where does he go from this point? You know, you got life in prison on that first count. And from what I'm reading, there will be several lives in prison, but you only have 1 life to give.
Right. I mean, there's really no question as to what the